Whatever, it's all the same.
So my name is Mugo, second year student in the Master of Development Practice from Nairobi, Kenya. And I'm here with MDP Chats interviewing Professor Ted Miguel of the Economics Department, NCGA, and he also happens to be a rockstar development economist.
I believe that what we're doing in the field of development and development economics is really important. I feel really excited every day to go to work. The way that we've been able to make progress in development economics in recent years often is by bringing in new data sources. Like, we're in a new world. There's so much more data than there used to be. There's data on the web, there's satellite data, there's cell phone data. And development economics is starting to incorporate all this new type of information into the study of what we do. And we tried to bring some of those new types of data, new ways of thinking into the book. And that was definitely true in Africa. When we study civil wars in Africa, one of the things we do in the book is try to relate the outbreak of civil war to bad weather, bad rainfall. So again, violence is very widespread. Organized political violence is very widespread in Africa. And there are many causes of it. And some are political, sometimes people talk about ethnic causes, and so there's a lot of different causes. But one cause that has been getting more attention and that we've been emphasizing in our research is the role of extreme climate. So it could be failed rainfall and drought, it could be very high temperatures. All of those things are going to lead to less crop production, and in the countryside people are going to be going hungry in those cases. When people are hungry and desperate, they may be more likely to engage in violence. So that's what we study in our research. With a bunch of co-authors here at Berkeley and co-authors at Stanford and elsewhere, we've got together as much information as we can on that link between extreme weather, extreme climate, and violence of many different types, from crime up to rioting, up to civil war. And regardless of the scale of violence that we've studied, and we've actually looked at different scales of violence in our own research, we've also tried to assemble data from other scholars' research. Regardless of the level of violence, when there's extreme climate in low-income countries, there's more violence. And that's a very important thing for us as a global community, given climate change.
And I was actually talked recently at the MDP, and you mentioned that Africa is the future. And a lot of people looked at you with skepticism, because it was the height of Ebola. And we also have the Congo crisis going on. We still have a lot of governments being toppled over in West Africa because of corruption and feeling like there's no real representation. So how would you talk to these, I'd call them Afro-pessimists?
There's been this very negative view of African development, and there were a lot of challenges, real challenges in African development in the 70s, 80s, 90s. There's still a lot of challenges today, for sure. But Afro-pessimism was the norm. I think it was grounded in very old-fashioned, colonial, historical views of Africa in the West. But it really is time to turn the page. You mentioned a lot of crises affecting Africa that are very real crises. Boko Haram, Ebola, those are real problems that have to be addressed. But despite a lot of those challenges, economic development and economic growth is continuing in sub-Saharan Africa. There's enough momentum behind African growth and enough fundamentals that have changed that those crises haven't derailed African growth. Africa has among the fastest, as a continent, has among the fastest growth in the world of any region. So there is a sea change economically. There has been a big change politically. Even though there are still many dictatorships and there's countries with conflict, there are many more countries now that have had competitive elections, more competitive than they've ever had in the past. So you can, the glass is always half full and half empty anywhere. That's true in the US, that's true in Asia, that's true in Latin America. We can look at the upside and the downside, but the upside, the positive developments at this point in sub-Saharan Africa greatly outweigh the negatives. And it's a big change from how things were, say, in the 80s and 90s, the sort of dark days in terms of economic development.
So what do you think your field of development economics has to offer to this new conversation of sustainable cities, the sustainable planet? Tell us about this.
We're in a new era. Development economists are taking environment much more seriously and seeing these interlinkages. And certainly in my own work, I see these two issues as being complementary issues. Now, in terms of the issue of cities, cities, we were talking about the future of humanity with Africa. Well, cities are the future of Africa. Cities are the future of the world. The world is urbanizing very rapidly. And in fact, many African countries are more urbanized, given their level of income, than any other region of the world. Africa is urbanizing very quickly. And Africa was urbanizing even in periods where economic growth was slow. It's just a process that African societies are going through. You know, Kenya is a great example of this, where Nairobi is one of the biggest cities in sub-Saharan Africa, a city with many millions of people. And it's an incredibly dynamic, creative place. I don't think it's a coincidence that that's where all this creative work on the engineering and technology side is happening. There's so much cultural change and artistic expression right now. So it's a very exciting time for African cities. The challenge, though, is going to be able to make sure that living standards are maintained in those settings, that in informal settings, in working class areas, you know, what people call slum areas of African cities, that basic services are brought in. And I think that is the big challenge. I'm also really lucky to be at UC Berkeley. I have so many colleagues, students, faculty, and others here who really share a vision for why studying development is important. That's actually not true everywhere. When I go around to different universities and research centers, you know, in most places in the US at least, the study of international development is this like kind of tiny field. Maybe there's 2 people on campus interested in it. And here we have constant dialogue and conversation and sort of joint research agenda across many different groups around campus on these issues. And the MDP program is one of the really exciting new additions to the campus community on development that's bringing all these new voices, all this new energy to bear on the problem. So I'm really excited to be able to be part of the same research community as folks in the MDP. And really that sense of community and common purpose is what drives us all forward. So I'm just really lucky to be here and to be doing something that I really love to do. So I feel lucky every day.